The moving truck was supposed to arrive Thursday morning. Instead, I came home from work Tuesday evening to find my wife's brother Danny sprawled across my leather recliner, beer in hand, watching my 75-inch TV like he owned the place. "Hey there, Nate," Danny called out without looking away from the screen. "Marta said you wouldn't mind if I crashed here for a while. Just until I get back on my feet, you know." I stood in my own doorway, briefcase still in hand, staring at this man who had somehow materialized in my living room like a bad magic trick. Danny Kowalski, 43 years old, perpetually unemployed, and blessed with the kind of confidence that only comes from never having to face real consequences. "Where's Marta?" I asked, setting my briefcase down carefully. My voice sounded remarkably calm, considering my blood pressure was probably spiking into stroke territory. "Oh, she's at book club tonight. Said she'd explain everything when she got back." Danny finally glanced at me, his expression suggesting I was interrupting his very important television viewing. "Hope you don't mind. I ordered some Chinese food." "Put it on your credit card. Marta gave me the number." Of course she did. I walked into my kitchen, my beautiful, organized kitchen, where every appliance had its place and every surface gleamed, and found it transformed into what looked like a fraternity house crime scene. Dirty dishes towered in the sink. Pizza boxes from the last 3 days were stacked on my granite countertops. The trash can overflowed with beer bottles and takeout containers. "Danny," I called out, my voice still maintaining that supernatural calm. "How long exactly have you been here?" "Since Sunday," he shouted back cheerfully. "Man, you guys have great water pressure in that shower, and that guest room bed is like sleeping on a cloud." Sunday. Today was Tuesday. My wife had somehow neglected to mention that her unemployed brother had moved into our house 3 days ago. The same brother who had borrowed, and never repaid, $4,000 from us last year. The same brother who had been kicked out of his last 3 living situations for being, in Marta's own words, a bit much to handle. I opened the refrigerator to grab a beer and found it completely restocked with Danny's preferred brand, cheap stuff, that tasted like it had been filtered through a gym sock. My craft beer collection, which I had been carefully curating for 2 years, was nowhere to be seen. "Hey, Nate!" Danny's voice boomed from the living room. "You're out of the good beer, so I had to switch to this other stuff. Hope that's cool." I closed the refrigerator door and leaned against it, counting to 10 in 3 different languages. This was fine. Everything was fine. My wife had simply forgotten to mention that she had given her freeloading brother unlimited access to our home, our food, and apparently our credit cards. These things happened in marriages. Communication breakdowns, simple misunderstandings. The front door opened, and Marta walked in, looking radiant in her new designer dress, the one she had bought for her book club meetings that seemed to require increasingly expensive outfits. "Oh, good. You're home," she said brightly, kissing my cheek like this was the most normal evening in the world. "I see you've met Danny." "I've met him," I said carefully, though I wasn't aware we were expecting him. Marta's smile flickered for just a moment. "I thought I mentioned it. Danny's going through a rough patch with his living situation, and I told him he could stay here until he gets sorted out." "It's just temporary." "How temporary?" "Well, that depends on a few things. He's looking for work, of course, but the job market is tough right now. And he's waiting on some money from his ex-girlfriend. She owes him quite a bit, actually." I had heard this story before. Different ex-girlfriend, same mysterious debt that would solve all of Danny's problems once it materialized, which it never did. "Marta, can I speak with you privately?" "Of course. Danny, we'll be right back." "No problem," Danny called out. "I'll just be here enjoying this documentary about sharks. Did you know they can smell blood from 3 miles away? Fascinating stuff." Marta followed me into our bedroom, and I closed the door behind us. 3 days, I said quietly. "He's been here for 3 days, and you didn't think to mention it?" "I was going to tell you, but you've been so stressed with work lately, and I didn't want to add to your burden." "So instead, you decided to surprise me with a house guest who's already racked up charges on our credit card and apparently drunk all my beer." Marta sat down on our bed and gave me that look, the one that suggested I was being unreasonable about perfectly reasonable things. "Nate, he's family. When family needs help, we help them. I thought you understood that." "I understand helping family. I don't understand why that help has to happen in our living room without any discussion." It's not like he's moving in permanently, just until he gets back on his feet. And how long did it take him to get back on his feet the last time he needed help? Marta's expression hardened. That's not fair. Danny's had some bad luck, but he's really trying this time. Bad luck? Marta, the man has been fired from 7 jobs in the last 2 years. At what point does bad luck become a pattern? I can't believe you're being so cold about this. He's my brother. And I'm your husband.
Doesn't that count for something in the decision-making process? She stood up and walked to our dresser, beginning to remove her jewelry with sharp, angry movements. Of course it counts, but I didn't think you'd be so selfish about it. Selfish. That was a new one. Selfish for wanting to be consulted before someone moves into our house? Selfish for not wanting to help someone who really needs it. I sat down heavily on the edge of our bed. This conversation was going exactly where I had expected it to go, with me somehow being the villain for not embracing the chaos that Danny brought wherever he landed. How much money has he already spent? It's not that much, just some food and a few necessities. How much, Marta? She was quiet for a long moment, focusing intently on removing her earrings. Maybe $300, but that includes groceries for all of us. $300 in 3 days. At that rate, Danny's temporary stay was going to cost us $3,000 a month, not counting utilities, wear and tear on our furniture, and the inevitable damage that seemed to follow him like a personal storm cloud. And how long are we talking about, realistically? I don't know, Nate. Maybe a few weeks, maybe a month or 2. He's really motivated this time. A month or 2. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine 2 months of coming home to Danny on my recliner, my kitchen destroyed, my credit card smoking from overuse, and my wife acting like I was the problem for not embracing this new reality was sufficient. Enthusiasm. We need to set some boundaries, I said finally. What kind of boundaries? A timeline, for starters, and limits on spending, and some basic rules about cleaning up after himself. Marta turned around, and her expression was not encouraging. I'm not going to treat my brother like a child, Nate. He's going through a difficult time, and the last thing he needs is a bunch of rules and restrictions. The last thing I need is to come home to a disaster zone every day. It's just a few dishes. It's 3 days' worth of dishes, takeout, containers, and beer bottles. Our kitchen looks like a crime scene. So we'll ask him to clean up more. It's not a big deal. But it was a big deal. Not just the mess, not just the money, not just the complete lack of consultation before this decision was made. It was the assumption that my comfort, my space, and my financial security were all acceptable sacrifices on the altar of Danny's latest crisis. I need some air, I said, standing up. I'm going for a walk. Nate, don't be dramatic. We can work this out. I'm not being dramatic. I'm trying very hard not to say something I'll regret. I walked back through the living room, where Danny had somehow managed to accumulate even more debris in the 10 minutes we had been talking. He looked up as I passed. Hey, Nate, you guys work everything out? We're working on it, I said, grabbing my keys. Great. Oh, and I hope you don't mind, but I invited a few friends over tomorrow night. Nothing crazy, just a few beers and some poker. Marta said it would be fine. I stopped walking. She said, what? Yeah, she said you guys love having people over. I figured it would be a great way for everyone to get to know each other better. I looked back toward the bedroom, where I could hear Marta moving around, probably getting ready for bed like this was just another normal evening in our perfectly normal life. How many friends, Danny? Oh, just 5 or 6 guys. Maybe 7. They're all really good people, Nate. You'll love them. 7 people. In my house. Playing poker. Tomorrow night. And Marta approved this? Absolutely. She said the more the merrier. I walked outside into the cool evening air and sat down on my front steps. My house. The house I had worked 60-hour weeks to afford. The house where I had planned to build a quiet, comfortable life with my wife was being transformed into a boarding house for Danny and his poker buddies. I pulled out my phone and called my best friend, Carl. Hey, man, Carl answered on the second ring. What's up? I need a drink. That bad, huh? Meet me at Murphy's in 20 minutes. Murphy's was a dive bar 3 blocks from my house, the kind of place where the beer was cheap, the conversation was honest, and nobody asked too many questions about why you needed to get away from your own. On a Tuesday night, Carl was already there when I arrived, sitting at our usual table in the back corner. Carl Henderson had been my friend since college, a straight-talking construction foreman who had never met a problem he couldn't solve with either common sense or a bigger hammer. "So," he said as I sat down, "what's the crisis this time?" "Danny Kowalski is living in my house." Carl's eyebrows went up. "Marta's brother? The one who borrowed your car last year and returned it with a dent and an empty gas tank?" "That's the one." "How long?" 3 days so far. Marta says it could be a month or 2. "And you found out about this when?" "An hour ago, when I came home and found him in my recliner." Carl signaled the bartender for 2 beers. "Let me guess. Marta forgot to mention it." "She was going to tell me, but I've been so stressed lately, and she didn't want to add to my burden." "Right, so instead she decided to surprise you with a house guest who's already spent $300 on our credit card and invited 7 friends over for poker tomorrow night." Carl's beer stopped halfway to his mouth. "7 friends?" "That's what he said. Marta apparently told him we love having people over. Do you love having people over?" "Carl, you know me. I love having you over. Maybe Tom and Jennifer on weekends. I don't love having 7 strangers in my house playing poker with a man who owes money to half the city." Carl was quiet for a moment, thinking. This was one of the things I appreciated about him. He never rushed to judgment, never offered quick fixes for complicated problems. "What did Marta say when you talked to her?" "That I'm being selfish, that family helps family, that it's just temporary." "And you believe it's temporary?" "I believe Marta believes it's temporary, but Danny's version of temporary and our version of temporary might be very different things." "What's your gut telling you?" I took a long drink of my beer and considered the question. My gut was telling me that this was just the beginning, that Danny's temporary stay would become permanent through a series of small crises and extended deadlines, that my house would slowly transform into Danny's house, with me as the unwelcome guest who kept complaining about perfectly reasonable things like dirty dishes and unpaid bills. My gut is telling me that I'm about to lose my house to a man who's never held a job for more than 6 months. So what are you going to do about it? I don't know. Marta's made it clear that setting boundaries would be treating her brother like a child, and apparently, not wanting 7 strangers in my house makes me selfish. You know what I think? What? I think you're being too nice about this. What do you mean? Carl leaned forward, his expression serious. Nate, this is your house. You work 50 hours a week to pay for it. You've got every right to decide who lives there and who doesn't. The fact that Marta made this decision without consulting you is a problem. The fact that she's making you feel guilty about having an opinion is a bigger problem. But he is her brother. So what? I've got a brother too. You know what would happen if I tried to move him into my house without talking to Linda first? She'd kill you. She'd kill me, bury the body, and then kill me again for good measure, because that's not how marriages work. You don't make major decisions unilaterally and then act like your spouse is the problem for having feelings about it. I knew Carl was right, but knowing he was right and figuring out what to do about it were 2 different things. So what's your advice? Go home. Tell Marta that Danny can stay for 1 week, 7 days, and then he needs to find somewhere else to go. Tell her that the poker game is off and that any future social events need to be discussed in advance. And tell her that if she's not comfortable with those boundaries, then maybe Danny should find somewhere else to stay starting tonight.
And if she says no?
Then you'll know where you stand in your own marriage. I finished my beer and stood up. Thanks, Carl. I needed to hear that. Anytime, man. And hey, if things get too crazy over there, you know Linda and I have a couch. I drove home slowly, rehearsing different versions of the conversation I was about to have with Marta. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had settled on Carl's approach. Clear, reasonable boundaries with a firm timeline. The house was dark except for the flickering glow of the television in the living room. I walked inside to find Danny asleep in my recliner, an empty beer bottle balanced on his chest, the TV still blaring a late-night talk show. I turned off the TV and went to the bedroom, where Marta was already asleep. I got ready for bed as quietly as possible, planning to have our conversation in the morning when we were both fresh and calm. But when I woke up the next morning, Marta was already gone. There was a note on the kitchen counter.
Had to go in early for a client meeting. Danny's friend Mike is coming by this afternoon to help move some furniture for the poker game. Thanks for being so understanding about everything.
Love you, Cles Twote. I stared at the note for a full minute, trying to process what I was reading. Not only was the poker game still happening, but now they were rearranging my furniture to accommodate it.
Danny wandered into the kitchen, wearing nothing but boxer shorts and a t-shirt that had seen better days in the previous decade.
Morning, Nate. Marta left some money for me to pick up snacks for tonight. She's really excited about the poker game. Said it'll be good for you to meet some new people. Danny, we need to talk. Sure thing. But first, do you know how to work that fancy coffee machine?
I've been trying to figure it out for 20 minutes. I made coffee for both of us, using the time to choose my words carefully.
Danny, I think there's been some miscommunication about your situation here.
What do you mean? I mean that Marta may have given you the impression that you can stay here indefinitely, but that's not really feasible for us. Danny's face fell.
Oh, how long are we talking about?
I think a week would be reasonable. That gives you time to figure out your next step. A week? Danny looked genuinely shocked. Nate, I can't find a place to live in a week.
Do you know how expensive rent is right now?
I understand it's challenging, but, and I'm waiting on that money from my ex. Once that comes through, I'll be able to get my own place. But these things take time. How much time? Well, it's hard to say. She's being really difficult about it. But I've got a lawyer involved now, so it should be resolved soon. A lawyer.
That was new information.
Danny, what exactly happened with your last living situation? He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. It was just a personality conflict.
My roommate was really uptight about everything. Cleaning, noise, having friends over. We just weren't compatible.
And before that? Similar situation. Some people just aren't cut out for communal living, you know? I was beginning to see a pattern. What about work? Are you actively looking for a job? Absolutely. I've got a few irons in the fire. There's this great opportunity with a startup downtown. They're looking for someone with my experience in customer relations. Danny had never worked in customer relations. His last job had been delivering pizzas, and before that, he had worked at a car wash for 3 weeks. That sounds promising, I said diplomatically. But in the meantime, we really need to establish some ground rules. What kind of ground rules? Well, for starters, no poker game tonight. Danny's expression shifted from confused to defensive. But I already invited everyone. They're counting on it. Then you'll have to uninvite them. I can't do that, Nate. These are good friends of mine. I'd look like an idiot. Danny, this is my house. I don't want 7 strangers here playing poker. They're not strangers. They're my friends. And Marta said it was fine. Marta doesn't get to make unilateral decisions about who comes into our house any more than I do. Danny stood up, his demeanor changing completely. Look, I don't know what your problem is, but Marta told me you were cool with all this. She said you were happy to help out family. I am happy to help out family, but help has limits. What's that supposed to mean? It means that help is temporary, and it comes with expectations, like cleaning up after yourself, contributing to household expenses, and respecting the fact that this isn't your house. Danny's face was getting red. So you're saying I'm not welcome here? I'm saying you're welcome here for 1 week, with reasonable boundaries. And if I don't agree to your boundaries? Then you're welcome to find somewhere else to stay. Danny stared at me for a long moment, until Danny would, and I could see him calculating his options. Finally, he shook his head.
You know what, Nate? Marta warned me you might be like this.
Like what? Controlling, selfish. She said you have a hard time sharing. I felt something cold settle in my stomach.
She said that?
She said you're really territorial about your space and your stuff, that you get weird about money, that you don't really understand what family means. Each word hit like a small punch. My wife had apparently been discussing my character flaws with her brother, preparing him for my inevitable unreasonableness. Well, I said quietly, I guess that settles it. What do you mean? I mean that if Marta thinks I'm controlling and selfish for wanting basic respect in my own house, then maybe she should find somewhere else to live too. Danny's eyes widened. Whoa, man, I didn't mean to cause problems between you and Marta. You didn't cause the problems, Danny. You just revealed them. I left Danny in the kitchen and went to get ready for work. As I was putting on my tie, my phone buzzed with a text from Marta. Hope you and Danny worked everything out. Can't wait to hear about the poker game tonight. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, We need to talk. Her response came immediately. Can't talk now, back-to-back meetings all day. But I'm sure whatever it is can wait until tonight. Love you. I drove to work in a fog, trying to process the previous 18 hours. My wife had moved her unemployed brother into our house without consulting me, given him unlimited access to our credit card, approved a poker game with 7 of his friends, and then told him that I was controlling and selfish for having opinions about any of it. At lunch, I called Carl. How did it go, he asked. Worse than expected. Apparently, Marta has been telling Danny that I'm controlling and territorial, and the poker game is still on because she already approved it. Carl was quiet for a moment. Nate, I've got to ask you something, and I want you to think about it carefully before you answer. Okay. How long has Marta been making decisions without consulting you? What do you mean? I mean big decisions, financial decisions, social decisions. Decisions that affect both of you. I thought about it. The expensive dress she had bought last month without mentioning it. The weekend trip to her sister's house that she had booked before telling me about it. The new credit card she had opened because the rewards program was better. I don't know, I said finally. I guess I never really thought about it that way. Maybe it's time to start thinking about it. That afternoon, I left work early and drove home to find Danny's friend Mike moving my dining room furniture around to make space for a poker table. Hey there, Mike called out cheerfully. You must be Nate. Danny's told me all about you. Mike was a large man with tattooed forearms and the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was currently dragging my antique dining room table toward the wall. What are you doing with my table? Just making some space for tonight. Don't worry. We'll put everything back when we're done. Actually, there's not going to be a poker game tonight. Mike stopped dragging the table and looked at me with confusion. Danny said Marta already approved it. Marta doesn't live here alone, and I don't approve it. Oh. Mike's expression shifted to something less friendly. Well, that's going to be a problem, because everyone's already planning on it. Then everyone will have to make other plans. Danny appeared from the kitchen, carrying an armload of beer bottles. Hey, Mike. Oh, good, Nate. You're home early. Mike was just helping me set up. There's nothing to set up, Danny. The poker game is canceled. Danny's face went through several expressions before settling on angry. We already talked about this. No, you talked. I listened. But the answer is still no. Marta said, Marta isn't here. I am. This is my house, and I'm telling you there's not going to be a poker game. Mike looked back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match. Maybe I should go. Yeah, I said. Maybe you should. After Mike left, Danny and I stood in my rearranged dining room, staring at each other. You're really going to do this? Danny asked. I'm really going to do this, even though it makes me look like an idiot to my friends. Danny, your living situation is not my responsibility. Your social life is not my responsibility. Your financial problems are not my responsibility. But I'm family. You're Marta's family. And right now, I'm not sure what that makes you to me. Danny shook his head. Man, Marta was right about you. What else did Marta say about me? She said you're really uptight about money, that you keep track of every penny she spends, that you make her feel guilty for wanting nice things. Another punch to the gut. I kept track of our budget because someone had to. I questioned expensive purchases because we had financial goals. But apparently, fiscal responsibility was just another character flaw to be discussed with her unemployed brother. What else? She said you don't really understand her family, that you think you're better than us because you went to college and have a fancy job. I don't think I'm better than anyone. She said you judge people who are going through hard times, that you don't get how difficult it is for people who didn't have all the advantages you had. I sat down heavily in one of my displaced dining room chairs. My wife had apparently been building a case against me for months, painting me as a snob and a miser who looked down on her family. Danny, what exactly did Marta tell you about this living arrangement? She said you guys had talked about it and that you were happy to help out.
She said you understood that family comes first. We never talked about it.
What? Marta and I never had a conversation about you moving in. I found out about it when I came home and found you in my living room. Danny looked genuinely surprised. But she said what she needed to say to make this happen without having to deal with my objections. We were both quiet for a moment, processing the implications. So what happens now? Danny asked. Now you call your friends and cancel the poker game. And then we wait for Marta to come home so the three of us can have an honest conversation about what's really going on here. But when Marta came home 2 hours later, she wasn't alone. She walked in with her sister Jennifer and Jennifer's husband Tom. My friend Tom, who I had known since college. Surprise! Marta announced brightly. I invited Jennifer and Tom for dinner. I thought it would be nice for Danny to see his sister. I looked at Tom, who shrugged apologetically.
Jennifer said you guys were having a family dinner.
We're having a family discussion, I corrected. Even better, Jennifer said, giving Danny a hug. I've been so worried about you. Jennifer was Marta's younger sister, but she had always been the responsible one. She and Tom had a solid marriage, 2 kids, and a mortgage they actually paid on time. If anyone could talk sense into this situation, it would be Jennifer. So, Marta said, looking around the rearranged dining room, I see you guys got everything set up for the poker game. Actually, I said, we need to talk about the poker game. What about it? It's not happening. Marta's smile faltered. What do you mean? I mean that I don't want 7 strangers in our house playing poker, and I told Danny to cancel it. The room went quiet. Jennifer and Tom exchanged glances. Danny suddenly found something fascinating to look at on his shoes. Nate, Marta said carefully, we already discussed this. No, we didn't. You told Danny it was fine without asking me. I didn't think you'd mind. Well, I do mind. I mind a lot of things, apparently. Tom stepped forward. Maybe Jennifer and I should come back another time. No, I said. Actually, I think it's good that you're here. Maybe you can help us figure out what constitutes reasonable behavior in a marriage. Nate? Marta's voice had a warning tone. Tom, if Jennifer's brother needed a place to stay, would she move him into your house without talking to you first? Tom looked uncomfortable. Well, we'd definitely discuss it. And if she gave him your credit card and told him he could invite 7 friends over for poker, how would you feel about that? I'd probably have some concerns, Tom admitted. And if she told her brother that you were controlling and selfish for having those concerns, what would you think? Jennifer's eyes went wide. Marta, you didn't. I didn't say he was controlling and selfish, Marta protested. I just explained that he's very particular about his space. What else did you explain? I asked. Nothing. I just wanted Danny to understand your personality. My personality. Which includes being uptight about money and thinking I'm better than your family. Marta's face went red. Danny, what did you tell him? I just repeated what you said. I didn't say it like that. How did you say it? Jennifer asked quietly. Marta looked around the room at 4 pairs of eyes staring at her, and for the first time since I had known her, she seemed to realize that she might be in the wrong. I was just trying to prepare Danny for the fact that Nate likes things a certain way. By telling him that I'm a judgmental snob who doesn't understand family, I never said you were a snob, but you did say I was judgmental. I said you have high standards. For people who are going through hard times, that's not what I meant. Tom cleared his throat. Maybe we should all take a step back here. No, I said. I think we should keep going. I think we should talk about how Marta moved her brother into our house without consulting me, gave him access to our credit card, and then spent the last 3 days telling him that I was the problem for having feelings about it. You are being unreasonable, Marta said, her voice rising. Danny is family. He needs help. And instead of being supportive, you're acting like he's some kind of criminal. I'm acting like he's a house guest who wasn't invited. He was invited. I invited him. You don't get to invite people to live in our house without talking to me first. It's my house too. Then why don't I get a vote? Jennifer stepped between us. Okay, everyone needs to calm down. I am calm, I said. I'm also done. What does that mean? Marta asked. It means that Danny has until Sunday to find somewhere else to live. It means that no one else gets moved into our house without a discussion.
And it means that if you're not comfortable with those boundaries, then maybe you should consider whether this marriage is working for you.
The room went completely silent. Even Danny stopped fidgeting. You're giving me an ultimatum? Marta asked. I'm telling you what I need to feel respected in my own home. And if I don't agree, then we'll know where we stand. Tom and Jennifer exchanged another look, this one more concerned. Marta, Jennifer said gently, maybe Nate has a point. You probably should have talked to him before Danny moved in. Don't take his side, Marta snapped. I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying that's how marriage works. You discuss big decisions. This wasn't a big decision. It was helping family. Moving someone into your house is always a big decision, Tom said quietly, even if it's family. Marta looked around the room again, and I could see her realizing that she wasn't going to find support for her position. Fine, she said finally. Danny can stay until Sunday, but I think you're being cruel about it. I think I'm being reasonable about it. And I think you don't understand what it means to be part of a family. Maybe not, I said, but I'm learning what it means to be part of a marriage. Jennifer and Tom left shortly after that, with promises to call later and check on everyone. Danny disappeared into the guest room, presumably to call his friends and cancel the poker game. Marta and I were left alone in our rearranged dining room. Are you happy now? She asked. I'm not happy at all, Marta. I'm disappointed. In Danny? In you. She stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. I don't understand how you became so heartless. I don't understand how wanting to be consulted about major decisions makes me heartless. Because family should come first. Before your comfort, before your convenience, before your need to control everything. Is that really what you think? That this is about control? Isn't it? I sat down at my displaced dining room table and tried to find the words to explain what the last 3 days had felt like. Marta, imagine coming home from work to find 7 strangers in your house, eating your food, using your bathroom, making noise until all hours of the night. And when you ask me about it, I tell you that they're my friends and they need a place to hang out, and you're being selfish for not wanting to share. That's not the same thing. How is it different? Because Danny is family and he's going through a hard time. And my feelings about it don't matter because family trumps everything else. Your feelings matter, but they're not the only thing that matters. They're apparently not even worth discussing in advance. Marta was quiet for a moment, and I thought maybe we were finally getting somewhere. I didn't think you'd say no, she said finally. So you didn't ask because you knew I might have a different opinion? I didn't ask because I thought you'd understand. Understand what? That this is important to me. That, Danny, is important to me. Danny is important to you. I get that. But what about me? Am I important to you? Of course you are. Important enough to include in decisions that affect both of us? You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. For the first time in this conversation, I'm being completely honest. About what? About the fact that this isn't really about Danny. This is about the fact that you make decisions and then inform me about them. This is about the fact that you've been telling your family that I'm controlling and judgmental. This is about the fact that you seem to think being married means you get to do whatever you want and I get to pay for it. Marta's face went white. That's not fair. Isn't it? When's the last time you asked my opinion about a major purchase? When's the last time you checked with me before making social plans? When's the last time you treated me like a partner instead of a roommate who pays the bills? I don't treat you like a roommate. Then what do you call this? You moved someone into our house without telling me. You gave him our credit card without asking me. You approved a party without consulting me. And when I objected, you made me the villain. Because you are being unreasonable. According to who? According to you? According to Danny? According to the people who benefit from my unreasonableness. We stared at each other across the table. And I realized that we had reached the heart of the problem. Marta genuinely believed that her decisions were reasonable and my objections were not. She genuinely believed that family obligations trumped marital obligations. She genuinely believed that I was being selfish for wanting a voice in my own life. What do you want from me, Nate? I want you to understand that marriage is a partnership. I want you to include me in decisions that affect both of us. I want you to stop telling your family that I'm the problem when I have opinions about things. And if I can't do that, then maybe we need to think about whether this marriage is working.
Marta stood up abruptly. I can't believe you're threatening divorce over this. I'm not threatening anything. I'm telling you what I need to be happy in this relationship. And what I need doesn't matter? What you need matters a lot, but what you need can't require me to give up everything I need. I'm not asking you to give up everything. Aren't you? You're asking me to give up having a voice in who lives in our house. You're asking me to give up having a say in how our money gets spent. You're asking me to give up being treated like an equal partner in this marriage. I'm asking you to be flexible. I'm asking you to be fair. We were going in circles, and I could see that neither of us was going to convince the other. I'm going to bed, Marta said finally. It's 7 o'clock. I have a headache. She left me alone in the dining room with my displaced furniture and my displaced life. I spent the next hour putting everything back where it belonged, thinking about the conversation we had just had. The next morning, Marta was gone before I woke up, and Danny was sitting at my kitchen table eating cereal and scrolling through his phone. So, he said without looking up, Sunday, huh? Sunday. Any chance you might reconsider? No. Even if I promise to be more respectful about the house rules? Danny, this isn't about house rules. This is about the fact that you're 43 years old and you're living in your sister's guest room because you can't hold down a job or maintain a relationship or manage your finances. Danny's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. That's pretty harsh, man. It's pretty honest. You don't know anything about my situation. I know that you've been fired from 7 jobs in 2 years. I know that you owe money to multiple ex-girlfriends. I know that you've been kicked out of your last 3 living situations. I know that you're waiting on mysterious money that never seems to materialize. Things are complicated. Things are always complicated for you, Danny. That's the problem. He put down his spoon and looked at me directly for the first time since I had known him. You really don't like me, do you? I don't know you well enough to like or dislike you, but I don't respect you. Why not? Because you're a 43-year-old man who expects other people to solve your problems. Because you take advantage of people who care about you. Because you make messes and leave them for other people to clean up. Danny was quiet for a long moment. Marta said you'd be like this. Like what? Judgmental, superior, like you think you're better than everyone else. I don't think I'm better than everyone else, but I do think I'm better than someone who mooches off his sister and her husband, and then complains when they ask for basic respect. I'm not mooching. I'm going through a rough patch. Danny, your entire adult life has been a rough patch. At what point do you take responsibility for that? He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You know what? You're right. I don't want to stay here anyway. I don't want to live with someone who thinks so little of me. Where will you go? I've got options. What options? That's not your concern anymore, is it? He stormed out of the kitchen, and I heard him moving around in the guest room, presumably packing his things. An hour later, he came back into the kitchen with a duffel bag and a backpack. Tell Marta I'll call her later. Where are you going, Danny? Mike said I could crash at his place for a while. Mike, the large man with the tattooed forearms, who had been moving my furniture around. I wondered what Mike's living situation was like, and how long his generosity would last. Good luck, I said. Yeah, thanks. After Danny left, I called in sick to work and spent the day cleaning the house. I washed 3 loads of dishes, scrubbed the guest room bathroom, vacuumed the living room, and generally tried to erase all evidence that Danny Kowalski had ever existed in my space. At around noon, my phone rang. It was Marta. Danny's gone, she said, without preamble. I know. He said you were horrible to him. I was honest with him. There's a difference between honest and cruel, Nate. Is there? Because I'm having trouble figuring out where that line is anymore. What's that supposed to mean? It means that apparently I'm cruel for wanting to be consulted about who lives in my house. I'm controlling for wanting a say in how my money gets spent. I'm judgmental for expecting adults to act like adults. You didn't have to attack his character. I didn't attack his character. Sai, nice. Nashini here off for me in. When you see in contrast state in the donos, he reads. I described his behavior. You made him feel terrible about himself. Good. Maybe feeling terrible about himself will motivate him to make some changes.
There was a long pause on the other end of the line.
I don't know who you are anymore, Marta said finally. I'm the same person I've always been. You're just seeing me clearly for the first time. The person I married wouldn't have been so heartless to someone who needed help. The person you married wouldn't have had to be. The person you married trusted his wife to include him in major decisions. I can't talk to you when you're like this. Like what? Like someone who has opinions about his own life? She hung up. I spent the rest of the day thinking about our conversation and about the 3 years we had been married. I thought about all the times Marta had made decisions without consulting me, and how I had convinced myself that it was just her being spontaneous. I thought about all the times she had dismissed my concerns as being too rigid or too controlling. I thought about all the times I had backed down from arguments because it was easier than fighting. When Marta came home that evening, she walked past me without speaking and went straight to the bedroom. I followed her. "We need to finish our conversation," I said. "I don't have anything else to say to you." "Well, I have something to say to you." She turned around and her expression was not encouraging. "I've been thinking about what you said this morning, about not knowing who I am anymore." And I think you're right. I'm not the same person you married. So you admit it. I admit that I've changed. I've stopped being someone who accepts being treated like a second-class citizen in his own marriage. That's not what this is about. That's exactly what this is about. This is about the fact that you make decisions, and I live with the consequences. This is about the fact that you think my job is to pay for things and shut up about it. I don't think that. Then why didn't you ask me before you moved Danny in? Because I knew you'd say no. And that didn't tell you anything about whether it was a good idea. Marta sat down on the edge of our bed and put her head in her hands. "He's my brother, Nate. He needed help. And I'm your husband. I needed to be consulted. It was just supposed to be temporary." How temporary? A week? A month? A year? How long was I supposed to live with a decision I had no part in making?
I don't know.
That's the problem, Marta. You don't know because you never thought it through. You just decided what you wanted to do and assumed I'd go along with it. Because that's what people do for family. No, that's what people do when they're not in a partnership. When you're married, you discuss things. You make decisions together. You consider how your choices affect your spouse. So what are you saying? I'm saying that I want to be in a real marriage, not a marriage where I'm just the guy who pays the bills and keeps his mouth shut. And if I can't give you that, then maybe we're not compatible after all. We stared at each other for a long moment, and I could see her processing what I had just said. Are you asking for a divorce? I'm asking for a marriage, a real one, where we're partners. And if I say no, then I guess we'll both know where we stand. Marta was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands.
"I don't know how to do that," she said finally.
Do what? Be the kind of person who asks permission for everything. I'm not asking you to ask permission. I'm asking you to include me in decisions that affect both of us. What's the difference? Permission implies that I get to control what you do. Partnership means we make decisions together. But what if we disagree? Then we talk about it until we find a solution that works for both of us. And if we can't find a solution, then we keep talking until we do. Or we agree that one of us feels more strongly about it than the other. That sounds exhausting. More exhausting than fighting about decisions after they've already been made? She considered this. I guess not. Marta, I don't want to control your life. I want to be part of it. But you do want to control some things. I want to have a say in things that affect me directly, like who lives in our house, like how our money gets spent, like major social commitments. What about smaller things? Smaller things you can decide on your own. I don't need to approve your lunch plans, or your haircut, or what you watch on TV. How do I know which things are which? You ask yourself, does this affect Nate significantly? If the answer is yes, we discuss it. If the answer is no, you decide. And moving Danny in affected you significantly. Moving Danny in affected me significantly. She was quiet again, thinking. I still think you were too harsh with him, she said finally. Maybe I was, but I was angry. About him being here? About not being consulted. About being made to feel guilty for having an opinion. About being told that I was controlling and selfish for wanting basic respect.
I shouldn't have said those things to him. No, you shouldn't have. I was just trying to prepare him for the fact that you might not be enthusiastic about the situation. By telling him that I was the problem, by telling him that you like things a certain way. There's a difference between liking things a certain way and being a reasonable adult with reasonable expectations. I know that now. We sat in silence for a few minutes, both of us processing the conversation. So, what happens now? Marta asked. Now we try to figure out how to be married to each other. And Danny? What about Danny? He doesn't have anywhere to go. He's staying with Mike. Mike lives in a one-bedroom apartment with 2 roommates. Then Danny will have to figure something else out. What if he can't? Marta, Danny is not our responsibility. He's a grown man who needs to solve his own problems. But he's family. And I'm your husband. At some point, you have to choose which relationship is more important to you. She looked at me with something that might have been surprise. You really mean that, don't you? I really mean that. You'd make me choose between you and my family? I'd make you choose between enabling your brother and respecting your marriage. Is that really different? I think it is. But maybe that's something we need to figure out together. Over the next few days, Marta and I had a series of long, difficult conversations about boundaries, expectations, and what it meant to be married. We talked about money, about decision-making, about family obligations, and about respect. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I thought we might not make it through. There were moments when Marta seemed to think that partnership meant giving up her independence, and moments when I wondered if I was asking for too much. But we kept talking, and slowly, gradually, we started to understand each other. On Thursday evening, Danny called. Can I talk to Marta? He asked, when I answered the phone. She's not here. She's at her book club. When will she be back? Around 9. Do you want me to have her call you? Actually, maybe I should talk to you. Okay. Mike's situation isn't working out. I'm sorry to hear that. I was wondering if maybe I could come back, just for a few more days, until I figure something else out. No, Danny. I promise I'd be more respectful this time. No friends over, no mess, no spending money without asking. The answer is still no. Why not? Because this isn't about your behavior, Danny. This is about the fact that you need to solve your own problems. I'm trying to solve my problems, but I need a place to stay while I do it. Then you need to find a place that isn't our house. But I don't have anywhere else to go. Then you need to create somewhere else to go. How am I supposed to do that? Get a job. Any job. Save some money. Find a room to rent. Like every other adult in the world. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You just don't want to do it because it's hard work. Danny was quiet for a moment. You really hate me, don't you? I don't hate you, Danny, but I don't respect you, and I'm not going to enable you. What's the difference? Enabling you would be letting you stay here while you avoid dealing with your problems. Not enabling you means making you face the consequences of your choices. Those consequences include being homeless. Those consequences include having to work harder to solve your problems. What if I can't? Then you'll figure out what rock bottom looks like, and maybe that will motivate you to make some changes.
That's pretty cold, man.
That's pretty realistic. After I hung up, I called Marta and told her about the conversation. How do you feel about it? She asked. I feel like I did the right thing, even though he might end up on the street. Marta, Danny has been avoiding responsibility his entire adult life because people keep rescuing him. Every time someone bails him out, they make it easier for him to avoid growing up. So we're supposed to let him hit bottom? We're supposed to let him face the consequences of his choices. And if those consequences are really bad, then maybe he'll be motivated to make better choices next time. That seems harsh. It seems honest. When Marta came home that night, she seemed different somehow, more thoughtful, more serious. I've been thinking about what you said, she told me. What part? About enabling Danny, about making it easier for him to avoid responsibility. And I think you might be right.
About what specifically? About the fact that I've been protecting him from the consequences of his behavior? About the fact that every time I rescue him, I make it less likely that he'll learn to rescue himself? That's a hard thing to realize about someone you love. It is, but I think it's true. So what does that mean for us? It means that I'm going to try to be a better partner to you. It means that I'm going to include you in decisions that affect both of us. It means that I'm going to stop putting my family's immediate wants ahead of our long-term needs. And Danny is going to have to figure out how to be an adult. Even if that's hard for him, especially if that's hard for him. I reached over and took her hand. I know that's not easy for you. No, it's not. But I'm starting to understand that easy isn't always right. And I'm starting to understand that I need to be clearer about what I need, instead of just hoping you'll figure it out. So we're both going to work on this? We're both going to work on this. 2 weeks later, Danny called again. This time he sounded different. I got a job, he said. Congratulations. What kind of job? Loading trucks at a warehouse. It's not glamorous, but it pays decent, and they're hiring full-time. That's great, Danny. And I found a room to rent. It's not much, but it's affordable, and the guy seems okay. How did you manage all that? Turns out, when you don't have any other options, you figure things out pretty quickly. I'm proud of you. Really? Really. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, but you were right about something. What's that? I needed to hit bottom before I was willing to do the work to climb back up. How do you feel about it? Scared, mostly, but also kind of relieved. Like I don't have to keep pretending that my problems are someone else's fault. That's a big realization. Yeah, it is. And Nate? Yeah? I'm sorry about the way I acted when I was staying with you guys. I was a pretty terrible house guest. Apology accepted. And I'm sorry for repeating the things Marta said about you. That wasn't fair. Thank you. She was wrong, you know. You're not controlling or selfish. You just have standards. I appreciate that. Can I ask you something? Sure. How did you know that tough love was what I needed? I didn't know. I just knew that enabling you wasn't working. Well, it worked. I mean, it sucked at the time, but it worked. After I hung up, I told Marta about the conversation. He sounds different, she said. He sounds like an adult. I'm proud of him. You should be. And you should be proud of yourself, too. Why? Because you let him figure it out on his own instead of rescuing him again. That was the hardest part. Every instinct I had was telling me to help him. But you didn't. But I didn't. How does that feel? Like I finally learned the difference between helping someone and enabling them. 6 months later, Danny was still working at the warehouse and still living in his rented room. He had even started dating someone, a woman named Carol who worked in the warehouse office and seemed to have her life together. Marta and I were doing better too. We had learned to talk about decisions before making them. We had learned to disagree without making each other the villain. We had learned that partnership required constant communication and mutual respect. It wasn't always easy. There were still moments when Marta wanted to make unilateral decisions, and moments when I wanted to control things that weren't my business. But we had learned to catch ourselves, to step back, and to remember that we were on the same team. One evening, as we were having dinner in our properly arranged dining room, Marta looked at me across the table. Do you ever regret how we handled the Danny situation? She asked. Do you? Sometimes, when I think about how scared he must have been. But then I remember that he's doing better now than he ever did when people were constantly bailing him out. And how do you feel about us? About how we handled it as a couple? I think it was the best thing that ever happened to our marriage. Why? Because it forced us to figure out how to be married to each other instead of just living in the same house. I agree. Even though it was really hard. Especially because it was really hard. She reached across the table and took my hand. I love you, Nate. The real you, not the version that just goes along with whatever I decide. I love you too, the real you, not the version that needs me to solve all your family's problems. So we're good? We're good.
Even though I'll probably screw up again? Even though we'll both probably screw up again. But we'll talk about it? We'll talk
about it. And we'll figure it out together. We'll figure it out together. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I thought about everything that had happened over the past few months. I thought about Danny, who had finally learned to stand on his own 2 feet. I thought about Marta, who had learned the difference between supporting family and enabling them. And I thought about myself, who had learned that being a good husband didn't mean being a doormat. It had been a hard lesson for all of us. But it had been worth it, because sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is refuse to make their problems easier to ignore. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is force them to face the truth about themselves. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set boundaries that protect your own well-being. Danny learned that he was capable of more than he thought. Marta learned that partnership requires consultation and compromise. And I learned that standing up for myself didn't make me selfish. It made me a better partner. In the end, we all learned that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's just enabling dressed up in prettier clothes. And that was a lesson worth learning, no matter how hard it was to get there.